In the final movie of the DC Extended Universe, James Wan presents an Aquaman that combines the silliness of the character and pits him against an incredibly serious real-life threat, Warner Brothers Studios. In the face of the cataclysmic, universe-ending threat that is James Gunn's DC reboot, James Wan crafts a quintessential Aquaman story of climate change, submarine-shattering sonar whales, evil sea gods, your friendly neighborhood octopus sidekick, and more, bringing to life what can only be described as a feature-length, live-action Saturday morning cartoon. I mean, come on, look at these guys. Incredible. It's straight out of an old comic book, and you know what? I love it. In crafting this vibe for the movie, Wan created a solid sequel to his first take on the character back in 2018, one that's packed with exhilarating action sequences, stunning environments, and a lesson that's bundled in an easily digestible pill for adolescent and adult superhero fans alike. When you get down to it, I think that Aquaman 2 has been getting a bit too much shit for being what it is, a fun time at the movies. It's easy to see why a large portion of fans have placed the weight of closing out the DCEU on this film's shoulders, but it's simply not fair. It was never designed to be that, and to therefore cut off its oxygen supply before it even has a chance to breathe is a bit harsh. Look, we all have our thoughts on the divisive DCEU, but its fate was decided long ago. There's no expectation, no setup, or legacy Aquaman 2 has to cement for itself, and the rest of the universe it just so happens to be a part of. It can just be a fun, carefree ride to the finish that serves as the closing chapter on an Aquaman duology. It's therefore fitting and freeing that Aquaman 2 is a drunken, Guinness-fueled romp that's an explosive time at the movies, even if it doesn't quite have it all together. At the beginning of the film, we find Arthur Curry, king to some, hero to others, hottie to most. I mean, come on, look at this guy. As he recounts the events of not only the first movie, but also what has happened since, and says the hero who once struggled to find their peace now struggles with balancing the best of both worlds. I mean, hey, it's a heroic struggle that we've seen countless times, and for good reason. It's relatable, and it's so very, very human, or half human, half Atlantean, I guess in this case. Since the events of the first movie, Arthur has settled into his role of King of Atlantis, but realizes it's not all it's cracked up to be. He enjoys the parts where he gets to flex his muscles, but the bureaucratic side of things, the governing, isn't quite the tea of choice for this son of a fisherman. At the same time, he's a dad now, and being a parent comes with its challenges. Sure, there's the beautiful moments and memories that last a lifetime, but there's also the sleepless nights, the schedule adjustments, and of course, the messes. Both jobs parallel quite nicely, each of which being roles you simply can't half-ass. Sure, there are parts of both that you love to do, but you can't commit to either just to skirt around the responsibilities you don't enjoy as much. I will say something truly admirable about Arthur's character is that while he does take responsibility for the duties bestowed upon him, he also knows when to ask for help. We see his father, played by Tamara Morrison, take baby duty at times. We see Arthur's counsel give him political advice, and what ends up being the backbone of the movie, we see Arthur ask for help from his own half-brother and enemy. Based on the opening montage, you'd think the focus would be on Arthur learning to balance his responsibilities, but honestly, after that intro where we're told Arthur struggles to balance being a parent with being a king, the whole parent part kind of falls to the wayside until the climax of the movie, so alas, balance isn't necessarily a focus here. Because unlike Spider-Man, Arthur seems to have the balance down, even if he doesn't realize it. In fact, one of the strangest things about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is how Arthur seemingly isn't challenged in any meaningful way. He's just sort of always right, and it's his presence that sparks a change in other people, those people really being one, and that one being Orm. And that's cool, I like to see how Arthur affects those around him in a positive way, but given how much has happened with Arthur since the last time we've seen him, you would think that maybe he doesn't have it down entirely, and I'd like to see a bit of a challenge for him to balance both worlds. Arguably for the better, the movie finds its core in the wounded relationship between Arthur and his brother Orm, or Ocean Master. For a film that deals so much in Shakespearean family drama and sibling conflict, it's therefore fitting that The Lost Kingdom acts as a sibling film to its predecessor, giving resolution to what was left open between these two brothers in the first film. In this way, both movies together are structured like an epic comedy. The relationships and rivalries that are left open at the end of the first are resolved in one way or another by the end of the second, making this pair of films feel like a single epic play with two acts. Lost Kingdom picks up after this intermission, reminding us where Arthur and Orm left off and pushing forward into the second and final chapter of their brotherhood. After breaking Orm out of his desert prison, the pair form a tentative team in order to take down Black Manta, a villain they both have a hand in creating. Orm used Manta as a disposable pawn, which isn't too dissimilar from how the evil sea god in this film is also using Black Manta. And Arthur, killed his dad, so there's a lot there. Both men's mistreatment of the mercenary lead to his scorched earth revenge plot in this film, though, of course, Aquaman's dooming of Manta's father ultimately fuels the fire more. But why would Orm decide to help his brother with this problem after the events of the first film? Well, the movie does a great job of showing the noble side of Ocean Master, putting his motivations in the past on display as acts of duty towards a kingdom that he truly loves. Orm, though misguided, does want the best for Atlantis, and that mutual drive to protect their respective homes from a madman with a doomsday device brings the brothers together. While bound in their, at times, tenuous alliance, Arthur and Orm slowly unravel the hurt between them by, who would have guessed, talking about their problems instead of using their fists. He mentions in the first movie, which is skillfully called in the new one, that he grew up excited to meet his brother one day, to be around someone with similar experiences and who knew better than anyone what each other were going through. He mourns the fact that he never got that with Orm, and that their first meeting had to be under such unfavorable circumstances. Orm counters this revelation with an admission of his own, telling Arthur that the only reason he hated him was because his father taught him to. He was raised to fear the bastard son of his mother, who would one day come to take everything from him. It's a really nice moment where Wan posits to the audience that though we may be different and seemingly incompatible at times, we all ultimately have similar goals and ambitions, and it's more important to acknowledge and come together over those shared interests than it is to further a divide. To think the worst of someone is to not afford them a fair chance, a chance to prove you wrong, which, we could circle back around and talk about how people aren't really giving this film a fair chance, and maybe they should take a page out of the movie's message in order to, I don't know, just take the film as it is, give it a fair shake. I don't know, that just my thoughts. But Orm isn't the only son in this movie to have daddy trauma either. The movie's chief antagonist, David Kane, the Black Manta, is driven by his thirst for revenge on behalf of his father. Introduced in the first film, David's first encounter with Arthur ends with Aquaman leaving his father pinned down while water quickly floods the room. Unable to free his father in time, David Kane escaped the sinking vessel with a new mission burned into his brain by his dad's final words.
You need to live so you can kill that son of a bitch!
It causes him to cling on to that hate, and after gaining power through his suit in the first film and subsequently losing to Aquaman, Kane seeks a source of even greater power to take down his greatest enemy. And I really want to stress the his here, because while Manta looks at Aquaman as his greatest adversary, Arthur most likely views Manta as a recurring nuisance at best. Things don't get personal for Arthur until Kane kidnaps his son. Kane's story through both films is a tragic one, but not because he dies as the worst version of the man he could have become, but because, honestly, he's pathetic. He thinks he's such a bigger deal in Aquaman's life because of the action that Aquaman took against him felt so personally vindictive, and so this guy must really care about me and must really want to take me down, and therefore I'm gonna, reciprocate. But after the personal matter of recovering his son is out of the way, Arthur really couldn't care less about him. There's bigger fish to fry. I mean, he literally just knocks him out with a single nonchalant punch, doesn't even dignify acknowledging him after he loses the power of the Black Trident. And while at first I admit I was a little frustrated with how anticlimactic his ending was, after sitting on it, after contemplating it, that's kind of the point, right? I can't think of a more fitting ending. A character who died as pathetically as he lived, obsessed and unwilling to change. He chooses to refuse Aquaman's help, not out of guilt or even pride, but out of spite. A film of ups and downs, it's clear that Aquaman 2 suffered from rewrites and multiple edits that ended up making parts of it feel disjointed. I mean, remember when Batman was supposed to be in here at one point? I mean, this thing's been through the ringer, and it's especially noticeable in the beginning, where so much setup led to unnatural dialogue and weird pauses for exposition dumps and mission briefs. There's no time to breathe. There's no time for us to find our footing. At the same time, I don't necessarily mind the film's fast pace. It brings a lot of energy, but it does feel as though ordering these events differently would have made for a story that didn't feel so jumpy. I just wish more time would have been taken for the characters to play in some of the amazing set pieces we see early on. I mean, this thing is like a playground. The practical sets, the action, the way James Wan moves the camera, I mean, it's so stylish. Even for a film that has a lot of issues, it's just beautiful and fun to watch. There's personality on screen. At the end of the day, I think I'm probably more down for Aquaman 2 than most people. It's just fun, man. It's big, dumb, colorful, vibrant Saturday morning cartoon spectacle. James Wan truly upped his game in this sequel, from the swashbuckling excitement of each fight to the set pieces that were beautiful to take in and fun to watch characters play in. I still had a great time watching this movie. I just wish that it was a little better. It's hard to call The Lost Kingdom a cap on the DC Extended Universe, because it really wasn't. While it technically will stand as the final movie before James Gunn's rebirth, no part of it felt like a farewell to the world or gave one last hurrah for a hero outside of Arthur. And perhaps that's for the best. After all, when you know the universe is already dead, why fight to expand it? The decision to keep The Lost Kingdom as a standalone sequel to its predecessor was most likely a wise one. Both films will have a better chance of standing the test of time without the need to watch other movies to understand them. Still, it felt like a group of high school seniors doing a victory lap the last week of school instead of focusing on finals. While Momoa's performance stays relatively consistent from the first movie, there were moments where it felt like reshoots were made just to get the movie over and done with. The final moments of Arthur's speech to the world played on the same trope that, ironically, kicked off the MCU back in 2008. While I did smile and laugh at Jason's final line, "I am Aquaman" felt like a meta senior prank that the suits allowed them to get away with because who cares? But ultimately, who knows? Whatever the intention of this edit, it will always stand as the final lines of the DC Extended Universe, the DCEU, and it is fucking poetry. A franchise killed by its envy for the MCU going out on the line directly referencing the words that launched the MCU.
I am Iron Man.